Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering formats and really like the point of formats overall and every competitive and like pseudo non-competitive official format in Magic the Gathering. I'm definitely going to miss some. Let me know in the comments. So first off, what are formats? Formats in Magic the Gathering are basically what cards you're allowed to play with. So the point of having formats is that if you could just play with all of the cards all the time, there are two things that would be wrong. Number one, every deck would be just disgusting and broken and really goldfishy, like meaning that like you do your own thing all the time and it's just like miserable. And nobody really wants that. People like having different flavors of their favorite game. It's kind of like ice cream's great, but if you had the same flavor of ice cream all the time, most people wouldn't like it. Some people would like it. Most people wouldn't, especially if that flavor is kind of forced upon you. So by having a bunch of different Magic the Gathering formats, you can play the same game in many, many, many different forms. Now, that being said, there's a lot of different Magic the Gathering formats, and I wanted to go through all of them and kind of explain what they are in case, people are newer to the game or they want to know about all these weird formats that you might be hearing about, like arena formats or whatever. So the first is Standard. Standard is probably what you should get into, and I hope your local store does, when you first get into Magic. It is the most recent sets. Now, Standard cycles, right now, they just announced that instead of having 1 year cycles to Standard, which they've had pretty much the entire time I've played Standard, they're having 2 year cycles to Standard, meaning that every 2 years, the previous years get cycled out, which means you get to play with your cards that you open for a certain number of years, and then every 2 years or so there's a big cycle, meaning Standard is always changing with things other than bannings, other than restricting cards, other than making it so you can't play with some cards, which is actually really fun and really fresh. The thing about Standard being in the most recent sets is that Wizards can kind of shape Standard in the way that they want, which is really cool. One kind of downside is often that means Standard is you're doing like way less powerful things than you do in other formats. So it's something to sort of balance out. Cards are generally cheaper in Standard than they are in Eternal formats because when you play older formats, often the cards aren't being printed anymore and you need to just like find them, where the supply of more recent sets are often much higher. Pioneer is a kind of cool format where it's Return to Ravnica forward and it does not cycle like Standard does, which means cards just keep getting added to it, which means the format continues to become more and more powerful as sets are added to it and more sets are printed. It does have a banned list that looks like this that we're going to do in post. Love you, future Sophie, who is editing this video. But other than the banned list, you can play any card that is Return to Ravnica forward. Modern, similar to Pioneer, is an Eternal format where it's 8th edition forward, including the Modern Master sets that are added to Modern and the most recent Lord of the Rings set, which is kind of cool. And you can play anything 8th edition forward and from those special sets, including this banned list. Legacy is kind of interesting. So Legacy has a lot less paper support, still has a giant community on Magic Online though. And Legacy is all sets, including Commander releases, but there are some restrictions, like you can't play the unsets except for the most recent unset, and things like that. It also has a pretty large banned list because they're still trying to keep the format not totally broken, which looks like this. Vintage is kind of like Legacy, except literally everything except for everything but the most recent unset. And there are no bannings, and that's the cool part about Legacy. At worst, a card is restricted, which means you can only play one in your deck, but there's enough tutor effects that's okay. But this also includes the only opportunity out of all of these formats, besides some weird like alchemy stuff on Magic Arena, to play with a Power 9, meaning Black Lotus, the Moxes, stuff like that. It's kind of cool. As far as limited formats, limited just means that you don't bring a constructed deck at all. You just like open packs and then you play with those. Sealed is a format where you open 6 packs, you make a 40-card deck out of those using basic lands outside of those 6 packs, and you make a deck. It's really fun, and you play against other people. And the cool draw to sealed and draft, which is the other limited format, is that your deck isn't the same every time, and so you have really novel experiences every time you play the format, which is really fun. Draft is a little similar, and draft is this really interesting thing where you have 3 packs, you open one of the packs, you look at the cards, take one card out of that pack, pass it to the next person. You get past a pack, take a card out, pass it to the next person. And then you continue until that pack is gone, open your next pack, continue until all 3 packs are gone, and then you make a 40 card deck out of the cards that you picked, which is very, very fun. Might be my favorite way to play Magic, to be totally honest with you. Unfortunately, where I live, there's not a lot of opportunity to play paper draft. There's also a few casual versions of Magic, the most popular one being Commander. Commander is probably the format you should play if you don't play competitively or don't have a local store and just have a small play group, because it's really fun. It's Commander. It's also a good multiplayer format where you have more than just you and your opponent. There can be 4 is probably my favorite number, but up to as many as you want playing a Commander game. But a Commander is a 100-card deck, and it's singleton decks, meaning that you have to only play 1 of every card. It does have a banned list that looks like this. And then you also have this special card called a Commander, where it is a legendary, normally creature, but sometimes planeswalkers can be Commander if they're printed as Commander product. And it is off to the side. And at any point, you can cast your Commander. There are other Commander rules. You can look into those rules. But you play these 100-card decks. You can cast your Commander. And the cards in your deck have to be the color identity of your Commander, meaning that there can't be any color symbols that are not on your Commander already. Really neat. Now, there's also a standard Commander, which I actually loved while it was popular in Magic Online, called Brawl, where it's basically exactly Commander, except it's a 60-card deck, has to be singleton, you have a Commander, but it's only standard sets. And I really liked it because you could kind of play standard in a really weird way, where every game was very different. I think that's the big thing that I like about singleton formats, is just like the games feel really novel rather than the decks doing really redundant and stupid things all the time. And then you can also play Two-Headed Giant, which is really cool, where you have a teammate on the same team. You have priority at the same time playing against 2 people, and you kind of act as one person, but you have 2 hands. You take your turns at the same time and all of that. And you can do this in just any format. Normally, Two-Headed Giant is played in like sealed, but you can also do it in whatever. It's all casual stuff. Now let's move on to weird arena sets. So Arena is Magic's true foray into digital Magic. Magic Online is meant to be a total replica of paper Magic. Magic Arena is kind of like Magic's response to the popularity of Hearthstone. There are some special formats that you can only play on Magic Arena. One of them being Explorer, which is like Pioneer. It's kind of Arena's response to Pioneer, where essentially you get to play pretty much any card in Pioneer, except for like Lotus isn't in Explorer, I believe. And they are continually printing more cards that onto Arena for Explorer that are relevant in Pioneer, so it can continue to be pretty much the same format. But the issue is that Arena was released after like the oldest set in the Pioneer format, so they just don't have all the sets on Arena. But Explorer, kind of like Pioneer. Historic is Ixalan Onward with Arena rebalances. Historic is basically from when Arena was announced, so it means Ixalan Onward, and then they have rebalances kind of like Hearthstone. So Hearthstone doesn't have bannings. What they do is they change the cards. And so changing the cards is sort of what Arena is doing in Historic. So they don't ban, they just change them to rebalance them to make the format good. Kind of interesting. They also have Arena releases. So some sets that are all just like Arena Hearthstone-y things that can add stuff to your hand or put cards into your deck and stuff like that by playing cards, which is just like something you just can't do in paper Magic, which is kind of cool. And then Alchemy is doing that, but only standard sets. So standard sets, except everything's super rebalanced, and they also release like Alchemy sets alongside standard sets, which have, again, these cool Hearthstone-esque things that are only possible in digital Magic and you can't do in paper Magic. Some traditionalists really hate it. I think it's kind of cool. I just wish there were more tournaments that are relevant, so I was incentivized to play these like neat formats. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's really a little more basics than I normally do on this channel. If you like videos like this, please let me know in the comments and like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description, especially on Twitch where I stream most days. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.